The 20-Minute Call is brought to you by SSK Industries, home of Cyprus, USA. Welcome to the 20-Minute Call, the podcast about the dreamers, boundary pushers, rebels, and champions of the skydiving industry. Each episode is a narrative journey highlighted by the highs, lows, and luck that the skydiving industry delivers, as told by the most influential people within the sport. If you've ever dreamed of becoming a skydiver, perhaps opening a drop zone, or becoming the next world champion, you'll enjoy the 20-Minute Call, hosted by me, James LeBarry. My guest today is a passionate, highly driven co-owner of Skydive City in Zephyr Hills, Florida. Alongside his wife, Lauren, Kyle Salvato is helping write the next chapter for one of the most iconic drop zones in the sport, a place with deep roots in skydiving history and a legacy connected to names like Jerry Bird and Olav Zipser. Kyle brings a rare hands-on perspective to drop zone leadership. With over 9,000 jumps, he's a tandem instructor, AFF instructor, A&P mechanic, and a commercial pilot with over 4,000 hours of flying, 3,000 of which flying jumpers, which means he understands the operation from the hangar floor to the cockpit to the landing area and everything in between. In our conversation today, we'll talk about what it takes to carry a legacy forward while building new traditions, developing new skydivers, and leading a modern year-round operation day in and day out. Please welcome to the 20-Minute Call podcast, Kyle Salvato. Hey, Kyle.
All right, James. How you doing, my man? I'm happy to be here.
Man, I'm so glad that you could make time for me this morning. I know things are running hot right now, and you've closed the door. You've actually turned off your phone to be present with me and the audience. Thank you for that.
Of course.
Well, let's dive in. I'm keen to know, firstly, Kyle, how old are you?
I am 41 years old.
Yeah, so you got a lot of life in 41 years. Tell me, where are you originally from? Give us a sense of your background and what it looked like growing up for you.
So I grew up in Long Island, New York, in a middle-class family. And I started my journey skydiving on Long Island back when my wife ran it at Calverton for Ray Maynard. One jump changed my entire trajectory on this planet. And that's the passion I bring to this industry now and sharing it with others.
Before I get right into the skydiving part, you got siblings?
I do not have any siblings. I have a lot of close family friends that I consider like cousins or brothers and sisters. I had a good group of friends growing up, but I do not have any siblings.
What were you like as a student?
I was the ADHD kid before it was cool. One of the originals. School was a bit of a challenge for me because it was hard to stay focused as a younger man. And then I found something in college that I was able to apply my passion to before I found skydiving. That was engineering.
Engineering. I mean,
yeah.
So was it a subject? What was it that was like, hey, this is for me?
I liked working on things as a kid. I grew up taking lawnmowers out of the garbage can or the garbage and then taking them apart. And eventually by 11 or 12, they started going back together and I was fixing them. I just always had a drive for machinery and understanding of it. So when I was going to get ready to go to college, I didn't want to. I wanted to be a mechanic down the road. And my dad sat me down and he said, okay, this is how this is going to work. You can go to college and I'll pay for it. Or you can be a mechanic and start paying me rent the day you graduate. So I pretty simply made that decision to go to college, but it turns out one of my neighbors was a merchant marine engineer on ships, and I chose the SUNY, State University of New York, Maritime College in New York to pursue my engineering degree.
And what was the track of engineering you were focused on?
Basically, a ship is like a small city, right? When you go to a maritime college, you're either going to study to navigate the ships and be a captain or to operate them. And I chose the operation engineering side. So ship needs propulsion, water production, sewage treatment, electricity production. And I was one of 5 officers in charge of monitoring and maintaining all those systems for most of my career.
Extraordinary. So you go to college, Before we get into is there any background in your family with like other people wrenching on things where it just made sense to their brains?
My dad always could do stuff, and I just was curious about it, but it kind of just, it was my thing. I needed a special area of focus that I was passionate about. I played a lot of sports growing up. Those were enjoyable, but in high school and throughout college, it really just became the center of my drive, was working on machinery.
So are you the kind of person when you find something, you lock in?
I think that's safe to say, James.
So you graduate from
Maritime College at 21 years old, making a boatload of money. And the way my previous industry worked is I was 2 months gone on a ship and 2 months off, but I got paid all year. So I utilized this job in my off time I made my first skydive at 22. And what I tell my colleagues, people coming up under me, I didn't get here being a good skydiver. I got here balancing two separate careers throughout a long period of time, to which now I'm able to do this one.
So were you in the military with this degree, like in the Navy, or was this more private?
The school is a state school. The one it's right across the river from where you're required to do 4 years of service in the Navy after. However, this school, I was not required any commitment, but it was a military-based program. So I wore uniforms, stood on the East River when it was 15 degrees out, saluting the flag every day while they took attendance. They prepare you in your training of 4 years there for shipboard life, which is very different from normal life in society.
So you knew you wanted to be an engineer, but what experience did you have being on the water? Like, I mean, what if you didn't like being on ships?
Okay, so going back to my vacations as a child, my parents' friends from high school, he was a Miami-Dade County firefighter. And when I was 7 years old, he had a captain's license. And our vacations every summer, we would charter a sailboat to the Bahamas and go for 2 to 3 weeks in the Bahamas. So I already had a passion for the ocean and diving, boating, stuff like that. But bringing the machinery side into it just seemed like the right fit for me. I grew up surfing, snowboarding, stuff like that. So I was always around the ocean. Being from Long Island, you're 15 minutes away from the beach, either shore. Someone has waves, the other one doesn't. So I definitely always had a passion for the ocean and being around the beach and stuff like that. So when it came to the experience of my childhood vacations, I just basically made that my career.
So you would be at sea for, did you say 2 months at a time?
Yeah, it was roughly 2 months on, 2 months off. I mean, give or take. And I did that for almost 20 years.
20, I mean, so when did you stop? I mean, you
I stopped. So essentially, it was a great career. I learned so much. I learned about policies and procedures, and safety was a key point that I bring to the new endeavor. But I stopped after I had a child. My daughter, Kailani, was born in 2019, and I decided trading my life for money was no longer worth it. So I was about 37, I think, when I stopped. She's 6 now. At that point, me and Lauren had decided to make the move to buy Zephyr Hills, and several years after she was born. But if you put all the time I spent at sea together, it'd be 7.5 years of my life, which is basically like a prison sentence. But 2 months on, 2 months off, it allowed me a lifestyle that I really chose to not exploit, but lack of a better word, follow my passions with money when I was off the ship. Gotcha.
What is the worst part about that job?
Being away for 2 months at a time, working 12 hours a day, every day.
Were there any scary moments? Like, I mean, I imagine stuff happens out at sea, right?
Yeah, I mean, it does. That's part of the reason that the schooling is so rigorous. I did 3 semesters a year. Part of the schooling is they would pack the entire school up and take a ship to Europe, which seems like a terrible idea from a management perspective now, bringing a bunch of 18-year-old kids on a ship over to Europe, 18 to 21-year-olds. But there was some, I've seen some nasty stuff because my run was mostly on the West Coast, and we would bring crude oil down from refineries in or from the Valdez pipeline bottom to refineries on the West Coast, and the Pacific Northwest and the Gulf of Alaska is a pretty nasty place in the winter. So there's definitely some tough weather and things to deal with, but I mean, you take it as it comes.
Fascinating. So where does skydiving even introduce to you before you even make your first jump? Where was it that it became even in your consciousness?
Interestingly enough, I knew nothing about skydiving or aviation, and nobody in my family did. I used to be, even as a skydiver in the early years, terrified of airplanes. Like I was that guy on a commercial plane going, oh man, I don't know. And then even as a skydiver, as most skydivers are, I was afraid of planes, like landing as a tandem guy until I took my first lesson. But there really wasn't a aviation background in my family. And I found it, again, we go back to my family, right? You said I had no brothers and sisters. I did have another one of my parents' friends from high school. They were like my three brothers and sisters. Their grandfather was a Korean War paratrooper. And for his 77th birthday in 2000, he said, I think I want to jump out of an airplane again. Or 2007, excuse me. He said, I want to jump out of an airplane again. So we did a fundraiser. My cousins were very active in the Veterans Health Alliance community. We did a fundraiser and called this, his name was Red Peelan. His nickname was Red. So we called it Get Reckless with Red. The first year we did that, we had 13 participants, and that was my first tandem. And the moment I landed, I knew my life was never going to be the same. I said, this is for me. How do I do this? So with that story, though, we ran that charity for 10 years and raised over $1 million for the Veterans Health Association of Long Island. And by the end of that 10-year run, the event was doing 120 jumpers on that day alone. And on that day, my life changed in two ways, because my now wife, Lauren Salvato, was managing that drop zone.
So that would have been Skydive Long Island, Calverton.
Yeah, that was at Calverton.
Yeah, so you make that tandem. You know your life is going to be different.
So it's interesting. I landed from my tandem, my number one tandem, and as we all know, you're chasing that feeling for the rest of your life because it never gets any better. And I walked in because I saw her, and I have a bit of a type. And I walked in, and I was about to ask her out, this beautiful blonde girl with blue eyes. And I said, no. And quite frankly, I'm glad I didn't at that point, because we had two different paths at that point. You know, we would correspond. I would write the office girls. It was her friend Allie and Megan running Skydive Long Island, and I would write them emails while I was on the ship and tell them when I was coming back. And they used to make fun of me because I didn't know stuff about stuff as I was coming up. And then fast forward 5 years later, in 2013 at Skydive Sussex, that is when we actually got together, when she was managing that place.
So what's the next thing you do? And did you know that Lauren was going to be was it one of those moments where you go, that woman's going to be my wife? And the fact that she was managing Sussex, is that the major influence of why you started jumping over at Sussex more? Or
so no, at that point I was still, this is about 4.5 years into my career, and I wasn't, I was chugging along, fun jumping, trying to be a video guy, but I had to balance my other job disappearing, and skydiving was seasonal up in the Northeast, as we all know. So, if you think about it, I only had a window of 1 to 4 months to do as much jumps as possible. So I would come to Florida in the winters and try and fun jump and meet new people and stuff like that. At that point, I had about 475 jumps, and my 3 people from the previous Long Island had bought Skydive Sussex together, one of which was a IE, and they said, hey, we're kind of just bringing Sussex back from one of Edos's, not failed, but, just kind of, it was at the end of its run. And they said, come work with us and you'll get your rating for free. So I showed up to Sussex, a single man with 475 jumps, and I left 10 years later, married with a kid, 2 turbines, and about 7,000 jumps at that time. So a lot had changed, but it was a fantastic place to grow as a couple, learn to manage in a team environment, as well as, just kind of build the foundation for where I'm at now.
This episode is brought to you by SSK Industries, home of Cypress, USA. In a sport where preparation matters and seconds matter more, Cypress has given over 5,400 jumpers a second chance at life. German engineered with precision and trusted by the world's best. Several times imitated, never duplicated. Cypress, the name you trust when it counts. Learn why Cypress has saved over thousands of lives at cypress.aero. How were you with AFF when you went through that? Did you just attack that? And what were you like as a student?
So I signed up for my second jump the day I landed. I had my own rig by jump 16. My own jumpsuit was ordered, which I still fitted. 17 years later, I still fit in my OG jump. Shout out to Duncan Shaw, Liquid Sky, if you remember measuring it for me, if you ever listen to this. Yeah, I dove right in, because like I said, I had another career. I had health insurance. I had the money. So I was there as much as my joke is I used to, Lauren's a fantastic customer service person. I used to call her every morning. How's it look today? Good. Come on out, hon. It's always sunny in Manifest, right? I'd ride my R1 out about 40 minutes out to Calverton and sit there all day on the ground because it was too windy, and then go home and then call her the next day. And then, that jump number of when you're trying to get to 200 is much more applicable to wind holds than it used to be, but or not than it used to be. Then I forgot where I'm going with that entirely.
So Kyle, you're at Sussex for 10 years. So you're 2 months away, you're back, 2 months away, you're back, and you're just, So if you're not at sea, you're doing tandems? Is that what you're doing? I mean, I know there's an
Yeah, so I started a majority, out of my 9,000 jumps, I'd say 5,000 are tandems. So I started tandem. I had finished my AFF about that time. I did the AFF thing pretty hard for a bit as an instructor, because it was a very small family knit. We started with 182s the first year and then built from there and grew and grew. And there's no degree on drop zoning, but when you're around people that care about it and want to build, it's a great thing. But yeah, AFF, I did a bunch there as well. But mostly tandem and video, just running it out. And I think it's a very unique breed of skydiver I grew up under in between Calverton and Sussex, because it's go, 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 like hard, and, we were doing an average of 15 to 25 jumps a day every weekend, and then 10 to 15 every weekday. So I used to do 600 to 1,000 a season, and it became my life, and me and Lauren were living at the drop zone. We lived in an RV for 7 years. There was only a couple RVs allowed there until we had a daughter, and then we bought a condo. But it just live, eat, breathe, sleep it, and take care of the people around you.
How did you not get burnt out at that pace? I mean, I know that pace seems to fit your personality, but...
That is a great question, James. And I started figuring it out. So I remember in my earlier part of my career, probably year 2 or 3, and when we're building the team at Sussex, it's interesting to have the perspective I do now versus being a young jumper. I had another job making tons of money. So I did this because I loved it and it's fun. And there were certain type of people, we've all worked with them, where they just make the job not pleasurable. So, I remember having a discussion with the owner at the time saying, bro, I don't do this for money. I don't want to sit here and get yelled at by this guy, or because he's miserable all day on the plane. You spend 8 to 12 hours riding in a plane trying to bring a great experience to people. And I vowed to myself at that point in my career, I said, if I'm ever in charge or own a drop zone, the vibe is the most important thing. Because if you don't have that, anyone can skydive. But if you don't have the vibe of camaraderie, safety, a good culture, and people enjoying being around each other, it's not going to work. just takes the fun out of it. This all it takes is one bad apple. So I just progressed from there. And then as I be kind of, the owner of Sussex will tell you, I didn't sign up to manage it. It just happened. I just grew into that role, and then I was just doing it because I was passionate about it. And that, to me now, is the most rewarding part of my journey arriving to DZO was actually becoming the guy that people looked up to and wanted to be, but also giving them the tools to be happy in this industry, in a place where they enjoy working. But to answer your question, you get burnt out doing anything, right? So when I was a full-time tandem guy, you get jaded. When I was the full-time pilot for 2 years, you get jaded. When I had to work on airplanes and that's all I did, you get jaded. So I find the key is balancing. And I tell this to all my guys coming up here because it's pretty awesome. In the hangar right now, I have 3 mechanics. They're all skydivers and pilots taking care of my aircraft with me. It's like you said, that hands-on leadership. You got to be out there with people, leading by example, right? So I find the key is to do a little bit of each. When you get to that point where you're not giving the customer your best, then go do something else. And that's what I ended up doing. And now, other than owning a drop zone, I am not burnt out on the operation. It's just the back end stuff that's killing me personally at this point in my career, But
define back end stuff.
So taxes, rebranding, bringing the Skydive City previous regime up to the digital age and stuff like that. They had an amazing run here of 33 years. And this, it's funny. Lauren and I have gone from camping in a tent with our dog getting eaten by fire ants back here in the campground to now owning this place. And if you ever would have told me in 2014 when I started coming here or whatever it was that I would own this place, I would have been like, yeah, right, dude. And it's just funny how life works.
Wow. Now, sometime I'm guessing, at what point do you decide, I want to be a pilot? I want to fly these things?
Great question. So this all started, like I said, with 182s at Sussex in 13. And there was 2 182s and a 206 they were leasing. Then my good friend Marco was a partner at the time in Sussex. He said, we should buy a plane and get into this. Now, fast forward, I said, all right, this seems like a good idea with my knowledge and background of mechanical things. So we buy a 182 that is an absolute magic show of 182. Shows up with dents, and it's nicknamed Daffy. It had this funny Daffy Duck on the side. And it ended up blowing an engine, and I bought it for cheap. And then we put a new engine in it, and that's how it all started with the aircraft side of management. But at that point, I had already owned a 182, and I said, I'm going to be a jump pilot. So I bought a 152, and every time I wasn't jumping, because we lived at the airport, I was in the airplane. And I started taking lessons with a guy privately there. My first lesson was very interesting. And that's when the changing point was for flying. So I went with this guy over Sussex, and he took me up for my intro to flight. I already have a couple thousand jumps at this point, and, riding down, I'm like, oh God, white knuckling behind the pilot in the 182. Like, I don't want he's going to crash. And it's a pretty funny transition period where he shut it off like 4 miles from the airport at a couple thousand feet. Not simulated engine out like you're supposed to do. Shut it off like dead stick. And I'm like, he's like, you think we'll make it back? And we not only made it back, but just greased it on the runway. And I went, oh my God, I've been terrified of something my entire life for no reason. And from that point on, I was like, they don't fall out of the sky. They're designed to fly. Like I said, I didn't have an aviation background. I trust something until I understand it. And then at that point, the switch went off. And so I flew that airplane for 350 hours personally, got through all my ratings. And then at 250 hours, I got into my jump plane and, or 251 right after I passed my check ride. And then I started flying skydivers in a 182 at Sussex.
Wow. Kyle, for a couple thousand jumps that you had before you started to learn to fly, for the longest time, you're just sitting as a passenger, unawares as to what the actual pilot is doing. Once you had an awareness, how did that change your perspective as a jumper? Or did you have newfound respect for what the pilot is doing? Like, did it change any kind of frame of reference?
It changed a bunch of frames of reference when I became a pilot. Time. You're so used to traveling. Aside from jump flying, you're so used to traveling. Your whole basis of time is cars, other than commercial flights. And then all of a sudden, you have this freedom to just go wherever you want at your own account, and things that take you 5 hours now only take you 1. And you're like, wait a second. But that was one of the first things I remember. The second thing is, understanding. My thing is, if you're paying attention to detail, you have to have some understanding of what's going on up front. Like, maybe you don't know what all the gauges are doing or what they're doing, but pilots have a lot of workload going on there. And having the jumps and coming into the pilot side, that's another reason I try and make sure all my pilots are skydivers, because a lot of people use jump flying as a stepping stone to just move on to the bigger airplanes, get in a turbine and go that. But the skydivers who are actually in the industry tend to fly with a more of a conservative passion because they know what's occurring behind them. So I think it was more of a mutual thing where as I was learning to become the pilot, I was also keeping in mind what it's like to be in the back, and I think it's a great thing to be able to do both,
I know recently not a safety day, just seemed like randomly, hey, we're going to do emergency procedures out of the aircraft here at Skydive City.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Okay. So this all stems, it's very funny. This all stems back from Long Island and the group of people that I met there. So that story I told about working with that individual that I chose not to, at that point, I'm living in Sussex, New Jersey, on the airfield, 10 feet from Manifest. And what am I doing? Because I'm now a private pilot working on hours. I'm getting in my aircraft, my 150 in the morning. I'm flying over to Calverton, and I'm jumping with my friends from Calverton all day and flying back because I don't want to sit with this dude on the airplane. So I'm building time, but also having fun, because that's what it's about, right? It's about having fun and working in an environment that's fun for everyone and safe. And this dude wasn't unsafe. It's just not the type A personality that always had something to say. And so at that time, I run into the jump pilot at Skydive Long Island, who is now a longtime friend of mine, Casey Monahan. He is grew up in a skydiving family. He is now a Challenger G600 captain. Doesn't have a ton of skydives. I think he still has more inside his mother than before he was born, because she was a 4-way, than he does in life, and he has 27. But so one night, I'm fairly new, getting ready to fly across the Long Island Sound, and he tells me what to do, how to close my flight plan, and make sure I get home safe. But he also saw me show up at Long Island and run to be the first one in every plane on the turn, and blah blah blah, and we just hit it off. And he has become my longtime friend and consultant in the aviation side, because he understands skydiving growing up in it, but also brings now the commercial side of everything and the check rides he goes through. And that's who's writing my policies and procedures. This way, we're mirroring 135, right? There's 2 reasons airplanes crash in our industry. It's bad maintenance and poorly trained pilots, right? So, because even if you run out of fuel, that's a poorly trained pilot, right? Or the gauges aren't working, you shouldn't be in it. There's a lot of operators that don't have a soul or conscience, in my opinion, because there's a right way, a wrong way, and a Kyle way to do things, and mine, I have the highest standard for maintenance because I want to know everything's okay myself. It's kind of a fault of myself, but
The 20-Minute Call is proud to partner with Freefall Films, the #1 AI video editing solution for the skydiving industry and the company I most recommend to my DZ clients. I endorse this software not because they're paying for this ad, but because I wholeheartedly believe Freefall Films is the best editing software in our industry. The software is backed by unparalleled customer service and genuinely makes drop zones more money. Get a free demo and mention the 20-Minute Call to receive a credit of $200. Freefall Films. Simpler, more powerful, more profitable. How does it originate for this sort of almost spontaneous, let's do emergency procedures?
Oh, so Casey, still, writing my procedures, he wants to help change the industry in a safer manner, bringing all the knowledge in. And we decided that, nobody, we talk about this stuff a lot, but when is the last time you do it? You don't, unless, we all got the stories around the bonfire or, oh yeah, this guy had this happen and it's all lore. But we said, well, why don't we have a huge airfield here, right? 6,000 foot runway, plenty of linear. Why don't we do something live and see how it goes? And, it was really received well on both ends. Everybody learned something, takes away, we debrief. And it's, I give the jumps away because, when something's going to happen, do you want to be ready and know, like, maybe something that somebody takes away from here just for the winter, us doing it, maybe they bring something to their drop zone, and we continue to spread the carnal or tribal knowledge of safety that a lot of people don't recognize, because unless you had that experience, how would you know, right? Like, so one of the conversation points of that was, well, how long do we wait to open? We're all taught this stuff based on the sim, but if we don't do a trial error engineering type of thing, how do we know exactly, right? We said, well, let's make sure, we clear the plane, right? Obviously, we want to stagger. We set these loads up in a manner where they may not have been in real life, but, now maybe some of those people know, okay, well, this guy's taking it lower, open faster, turn upwind and away from the line of flight because everybody's getting out on a simulated exit, So it was also for the pilots to start their critical thinking of at what time do I have to make this decision? Because that's the other thing, you may have gotten taught emergency procedures in a caravan, but that's coming, right? If you're doing a check ride, that's coming. You don't know when it's really going to happen in a real life situation. And you have to approach each jump, each flight in that manner. Otherwise, you're going to get burned. Because in aviation, if you do it long enough, or skydiving, it's not a matter of if, it's when, right? It's going to happen. Engine shut off, or you have a malfunction. It's not if, it's when. Do we do everything we can to mitigate the risk? Absolutely, if you're smart. And you build good muscle memory and stay alert and be ready. But, it's going to happen sooner or later, right?
So Kyle, back to the Sussex days, you're cranking out time, you're building it. You said after 10 years, you leave with two turbines like this. There's a big investment made here. Tell me, that's a major decision to go in on that.
So Lauren and I, my wife has done skydive operations since she's 18 years old. Her father was a pilot. He did a tandem skydive at Stroudsburg, I think, and she was 18 years old when he did it, or maybe he started before that. Regardless, she answered an ad from the paper, classified, for office help while she was working in a nursing home as a job for office help. And that began her journey of 22 years of drop zone management. And Lauren, if anybody who knows Lauren or has worked with her over the years, if anybody's listening, is a very particular human being in how she does things. She's very smart, very stubborn, but can also deliver customer service Like you can walk out of the room after she scolds you or something and still feel good about yourself somehow. She just has that customer service, and she's driven. And I watched her in Long Island. I didn't know her at Sky's the Limit. I watched her in Long Island help build that place. And then that's one of the reasons the owner of Sussex asked her to run it, because he knew she just applies herself fully into that, and she's the puppet master. So we became a team there, and we were cranking it out.
So let's now fast forward 10 years. You got a couple turbines. I guess you're an A&P by this time as well.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me.
A&P happened right before we moved here. I mean, I had the knowledge. I was working on it because you have to do an apprenticeship, and I was working up there in Sussex under some guys. And so basically, we always wanted a drop zone, Lauren and I, and we were supposed to get Sussex, but unfortunately, the airport owner, even though he's a skydiver, doesn't have a long-term contract, and we were going to buy the last owner out of Sussex in 2024 if everything went well and he could retire. But he couldn't get a contract from the airport owner. So here I am now, 8 to 10 years into my career at Sussex with 2 turbines on the line. And, I have a daughter that's 3, and I'm going, this could evaporate at any time. And I had already been approached a very long time ago when I was flying here, getting, my turbine time and intro to the Otters in 19, and in 20, John Stark called me and said, I think I convinced Susan to sell it. You want it? And I went, no, I'm supposed to get Sussex. So I sat the owner of Sussex down and I said, hey man, you got this long. And it turned out it just wasn't working right with the longevity of potential up there. So I made the decision to move down here. And
so tell me, when you bring it to Lauren and you're like, what do you think about buying Skydive City? What does that conversation look like?
Yeah. No. What are you, out of your mind? And I said, well, we're going to do it. And she fought tooth and nail all the way down. Because she wanted to be mom, and this comes with a new set of challenges, right? This is a year-round operation. Lauren and I were really good at running seasonal drop zones, but then there was a checkout. Like, November comes around, bye-bye, and then we would go down to my house in the Keys. Lauren would do the bookkeeping, catch up on everything, and kind of take a break, and then we'd light it off again. But now, it was actually a fault of ours as a couple the first year. We were running it like it was a seasonal drop zone all year long, and it literally was just beating up on our health and our mental well-being. So we've learned a balance game of keeping it. It's very interesting from my perspective of growing up in seasonal drop zones. It ramps up, then it runs insanely high pace, and then tapers off and disappears. Whereas this is kind of like a whoop section on a dirt bike. This place goes up, down, up, down, all sorts of different. You hear my 2-stroke in the back. It has its different waves throughout the year. Like, we just came out of January where I'm like, what's going on? We're going to run out of money here. And then this weekend we flew 95 loads in 2 days. So it's back, and then for the next 6 to 8 weeks, we got events and camps stacked out and then April, everybody will go back up north and disappear. So it brings its own set of challenges, but she definitely fought it. And then it was a huge undertaking in the beginning, because you're walking into an operation where you weren't running it, right? And you have to get to know everybody, earn their trust without upsetting the complete structure while accomplishing your goals of making it better. Right. So the first year was extremely strenuous. And, then we had a hurricane that year too. It was one thing after the other, but we made it through, and she started to have fun at about 8 months in. And I was like, my God. She was still like, this is terrible, but it is a journey, and I would say if anybody wants to be a DZO, the journey getting to it is much more fun than the arrival point. You know, I tell Matt, my manager, Matt Adamson, who started with a weed whacker in his hands for me, as I like to remind him, he's got the best job. He's making all the choices, running around, but at the end of the day, he doesn't have the liability and the headache that comes with ownership, So, but it's definitely enjoying the journey part of it is very critical to anyone who wants to end up here.
This episode is sponsored by SSK Industries, home of Cypress, USA. Since 1983, SSK has served the parachuting industry, and today they focus on Cypress sales, service, and support in the United States. Learn more at sskinc.com. I want to hone in on something, because I've heard many DZOs say this, but I don't think the public knows this. Is you said, we just got through January, and I'm a little nervous that we're going to run out of money. Now, kind of jokey because, we see what's on the horizon of what's coming.
Yeah.
But this thing costs a ton.
Yeah, it's the overhead is insane to run a drop zone. It depends. There's so many different types of drop zones, right? I know you wanted to talk about this, but Skydive City itself has 5 companies. If you think about it in one, you got the restaurant, the bar, or the cafe bar. We have trailers for rent here. We have the trailer park for camping on site, and then there's the airplanes and the business of just skydiving, in general. So that's like a whole nother animal as opposed to just a tandem or fun jumper operation. There's hospitality. The bills here are absolutely bananas because this is a big campus. We have a 15-acre leasehold from the city. And then, you talk about aircraft. The one thing I'm extremely lucky to have is a variety. There's so many different types of operations from 182 up to, caravans and otters and sky vans. And I'm lucky at my point to be able to cater to the demand while still managing efficiency. When we're slow, we run a short caravan. If we need to, we switch to an otter or have the super van lying around, And if you just have certain types, the fuel alone, I think is here for the years $250,000 to $500,000. There is a lot of cost associated with doing this activity and the sport that people don't see.
You mentioned something that made me think about Doug Smith, who I've had on this program. And one thing that he highlighted was the biggest headache in all the headaches that come with running a drop zone was his restaurant. And the challenge is there. Have you found that to be similar?
So I got a great guy in there, Justin. He's kind of just self-sufficient. You don't make any money off the restaurant. I think Dougie makes some money off of his. It's a pretty nice setup. It's like a diner. We just took over. We have the kitchen. It's basic breakfast and lunch with a somewhat healthy menu. But yeah, it brings its own set of challenges because that's a whole other set of employees, right? And I try and approach everything with the obviously cater to skydivers first, and if they want to be involved in that part of it, but it doesn't make a ton of money. I can tell you that much. It is a headache with legality wise. You got all sorts of certificates, food inspections, fire, and stuff like that. So. But at the end of the day, we are, and that's another thing that's pretty funny. Remember how in the beginning I said, Skydive or ships are like a small city. Skydive City is like its own city, and that's kind of why I'm pretty good at this because I used to operate a whole facility, and this is similar to that in a respect, But the restaurant it does its thing, I'm not making a ton of money off of that, but people got to eat. Right. Justin does an amazing job smoking when he does the dinners. I bought him a smoker the first year, and, we're giving good portions for good price. And just, it's like I said, the funny joke is, how do you make $1 million in aviation? Start with 2. I don't do this because I think I'm going to get filthy rich here. I do this because it's almost a calling in a way because, we're talking about stuff on your brain trust, like skydiving is crippling itself with the pricing and stuff. This is, there's another me walking through that door at any point, right? Somebody else's life is getting ready to get changed. It's so much tribal knowledge, and I think it's important to carry the tradition and improve the best we can while it's my turn, And that's another interesting thing about Z Hills versus, us running seasonal. Lauren had built those up from nothing, or not nothing, but very limited to bigger drop zones. Whereas when we came here, like you said in the intro, this place is so legendary. This isn't our drop zone. This is just our turn, man. There's been skydiving on this airport since the 60s. Dude. Like when I was, addressing city council when I first started moving here, I still go to the meetings, but there's a parachute on the city council emblem. Like, it's so interwoven in the community, as opposed to me trying to explain to a normal city, like, we're skydivers. They're like, what? Whereas here, they're like, oh yeah, cool. How you doing, Skydive City? It's such a legendary place that it comes with a big burden, but also it's definitely a wild ride.
Kyle, what has been your hardest day as a DZO and your best day?
Oh man, hardest day and best day. I gotta think about this one. I think the hardest day was when I found a guy dead in a tent camping. Yeah, he had. It was a cold night, and he had closed his propane heater in a zipped up tent, and he passed away. And that was in the first year, also. And the best day. Every day is the best day at Skydive City. No, I don't think I would isolate it to one specific thing. There's too many variables and ups and downs to have to pick. The hard one is easy, whereas there's so many ups and downs on the other side where, just seeing 5 planes run in the air at once, no problem. In Flamingo, like this weekend was a great one. I kind of just take it as it comes. I think I don't have a best. Like, there's not one specific best day where I can honestly say that was the best day I ever had.
When I look back on my time running a drop zone, I don't recall a best day, but I have a sense of, or a feeling that the days when you've got one or ideally multiple aircraft that are turning and never shutting down, and it's boom, 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 and
Yes.
Everything is in flow. I used to feel like, the packing mat.
Yeah.
Like, if any one station breaks down, if the packing mat slows down, or if somebody's not there to load the air.
Balance.
Yes.
And I used to say this to all, when I was running Sussex, we'd have a morning meeting every day at Saturday and Sunday to kind of get everybody ready. Because, we were a single plane operation doing 100 to 150 bookings on a Saturday. There is no room for error. Like, even something as simple as fueling 2 wings instead of 1 throughout 30 loads, it's the balance. You got to have the lift, the customers, the packers, the staff, and the gear. And if one thing goes out of whack, the whole thing is. So, it's got to be a well-oiled machine where everything balances with each other to keep it going. And it's definitely, that's something we're trying to work on here too, now adding the caravans. We've found it's better to run a small plane turning than it is to start and stop an otter, right? Like, my goal for customers coming here is to not have to wait more than 45 minutes ever to get on a load, and for the loads to be continuously available. So, having a shorty, that's pretty easy to fill with 10 people. So we started off, if it gets, we're an on-demand center, right? If it gets bigger, then we switch to an otter. And sometimes at 3:00, when people start disappearing, we go back to the shorty. If it's like this weekend, we added number 3 as necessary, while the other 2 were turning and burning all day. It is such a delicate balance game, but once it's lit and going, it's just fantastic. It's like you said, you just one after the other, and the flow. It just feels, it's alive, dude. It's alive. and it takes so many different people to keep it moving too. From the loaders and the packers to the fuelers to, if you get a big day, I got to have an air boss, with 5, and making sure everybody's safe. Like this weekend was great. We had a camp, Red Bulls here, 95 loads between 3 planes, and not one safety incident or accident. And that's, I got the guy on the ground, the S&TA Logan's out there, the fuelers clearing us in, it is a balanced game, but when it goes off, it is quite the rewarding experience. And then the other part of it is that people enjoy it.
Yeah, I feel there's nothing better than having a cold beer at the end of the day. Nobody got injured, and it was just turning. Yeah. It's amazing when everything shuts down and the vibe just kind of dips. But when the vibe is
when you hear that prop, depending on what aircraft you run, when you hear that prop go feather and then shut down, it just takes the wind out of the sail, man. So we're trying to just keep operate whichever one, because it changes the whole tone. Like even the fun jumpers, it's just like, oh, I can go get this done. Or it takes away we talked about focus earlier. It takes away the focus, intense focus on what's actually happened when it stops turning.
Kyle, what's your superpower?
Fixing stuff. A heavy understanding of machinery and systems, I would say. I don't think I have any superpowers. I put my pants on one leg at a time, just like everybody else.
Yeah, it's interesting, though, because there's this very noticeable, I think I would speak on behalf of anyone that's been to Skydive City or at least follows you online, there is definitely a palpable energy. There is, it's very clear to hear your voice and your approach, why that energy is shifting. It's the beast that is Skydive City, the force that it was for so long. It's just so alive.
Yeah, well, that's it. Everything comes in waves, right? That's something I see now, and it makes the challenges of me beating myself up running this place worth it. Is when I see the joy, the people happy, and that the fire is lit. And I don't mean the actual fire pit, which we redid, but I mean like the energy of the place, because this was one of my favorite locations, and then seeing it at the end of the last tenure where it just kind of got overlooked in certain aspects was disheartening. So, we knew this was going to be a challenge, but now that it's starting to trend and continuously moving in the right direction, we're super ecstatic to share the journey and experience with everyone, So
for those that haven't been to Skydive City in a while, what are the major changes that if they come to the drop zone today, as opposed to maybe it's been 5 years since they've been, what are the most noticeable changes that you've made?
Yeah, well, facility improvements, on the camping and bathhouse side, as well as the birdhouse. The birdhouse is now enclosed with air conditioning in the summer, and I'm hopefully adding another air conditioner because I want people to get pneumonia from packing because it's like 9,000 degrees here in the summer. Facility improvements, aircraft availability. We're, like I said, an on-demand skydive center. My new saying is, if you can dream it, we can do it. And people are taking me literally, and we're doing all sorts of cool, I like to see cool things be done, and we do it, so facilities, and then there's a bigger picture here if the city bites off on it of redeveloping even further, but, just cleaning it up. We just took one of the big tree obstacles out of our landing area, ponds clean, good maintenance, just all sorts of positive things. And then the energy and the vibe, we're here to grow as a team and a group. The community is a strong sense of community, so we could do it.
You said, if you can dream it, we can do it. And something that came across my radar last year was you had the Qatari group out, and usually when I hear that, because I've heard the Qataris have been at other drop zones before, and usually it's them training really with the demo team, but you were churning out AFF students with that group at a clip that I don't even know I've ever heard of. How do you get them? I mean, if you're willing to share, and then how do you put on something that I'm not aware that any other drop zone has really done with them at that pace or that scope?
No, that was, I called it the Qatari madness. That first summer was absolutely wild. And how did I get them? Me and my big mouth. I was meeting with one of the guys that is our liaison for them. And he said, I got all these teams, but I'm thinking it's about sending some to Lake Wales, some to here, because that's just too many people to bring one spot. And I said, no, it's not. Bring them all here. We'll do it. And he's like, no, that's like 110 people at one time. And I'm like, that's okay. We'll figure it out. And he's like, you sure? I'm like, yeah. And I wrote a check that my ass had no way of cashing. But we pulled every string and every connection. And so basically the demo team trains here. There's several other teams in the military for the Qatari, but what they do every couple of years is they need to replace the members that are aging out or moving on with the other part and getting off the team. So they tasked us. We had 65 first jump course students show up at once. And, we pulled all sorts of external contractors. We had the lift, right? We got the planes here. And we created a system where we licensed 48 of them in 28 days. We had people managing it was absolute insanity. There was a giant whiteboard and we were just cranking through. It literally, I don't think it was like anyone, like you said, has ever done anything that big in a short period of time. But it was a great learning evolution. And we could definitely do it again if somebody required it. But it was just having that team of people together, managing, the regulation side of it and just making sure all the boxes get checked. And the best part of it is, too, it wasn't like we were shooing them through it. It was actual up to USPA standard. We just had so many people. Like it was a group effort too, the land. But when Bob was still around, he was offering to give me rigs and he gave me half his staff. Like we were just anyone we knew that was a qualified and worthy AFF instructor, we were flying them down and putting them up. Like it was 14 hours a day. It was 40 otter loads a day plus for 28 days straight. Yeah, it was wild. Oh my God. It was absolute. Me and my other pilot, Steven, who's a world-class skydiver, we literally nicknamed my wife Black Widow on the radio because she was trying to kill us, man. I'm talking 8 in the morning to 8 o'clock at night, just turning loads. Other than those afternoon thunderstorms, it was wild.
Wow, you must have been exhausted by the end of that. If you're a DZO or DZM listening to this podcast and you're not using Burble, I've got a question. Why not? If the reason is price, what's the cost of your time? Other booking and manifest softwares are a one-size-fits-all. Burble was built from the ground up by a DZO for DZOs to maximize efficiency. Now, isn't that nice? There's no software that compares. Choose Burble. Have you been surprised by, because many DZs, it's day in, day out, tandems, AFF, students, fun jumpers, but your facility has some high profile folks. I've heard a rumor, I don't even know if it's true, that Tom Cruise, would come and jump at Skydive City. Like, have you had some pinch me moments going, whoa, I didn't really see this coming when I was going to acquire?
Oh, almost every other day, man. This place has got a mind of its own. TK said something to me. TK was one of the former owners and managers, but he left in 2018. And I ran into him a couple times. And he said, dude, you're going to be fine, man. Sea Hills, just keep the automatic gunfire down in the trailer park to a minimum. And it's just going to do its thing. And if you apply yourself to it, it does. We got like you can see the colors in the back here. You can see it. They can't. Hayabusa comes to train here. Now Hayabusa's reached out and Czech comes with them. Other teams are training. We got Red Bull here. When you want to do things and run loads all the time, people want to be part of it. So, it goes back to customer service, making sure they're taken care of without losing money. And if there's work to do, we're going to do it. We bring that Northeast mentality down in Florida, and it's a little bit different. But yeah, I mean, jumping with Tom Cruise, and I was, I cheesy. The one interesting part about his endeavor here was, he called me the night before, or his sister did, and said, can we shut down the drop zone? Because, that guy can't go anywhere without people bothering him. So I grabbed my staff and I said, listen, man, you don't go ask him for anything. Just treat him like a normal skydiver. That's all he wants out of this. And he bought a bunch of tandems. We took care of him. And, it just, if you take I think that's what skydiving is for a lot of people. You take the real world out of it for a minute. It's just you in that moment with the people you want to jump with, right? And that's, that clarity it brings. But it worked, man, and he had a great time. I dropped a Days of Thunder quote on him on the ride up. No, it's been a journey for sure. We got, film events going on and Red Bull, flocking. There's other things in development too. It's just, this place has a mind of its own, man. And as long as you support it, it's just going to keep doing it.
It sounds like one of the most exciting places to be in skydiving right now, Kyle. And I'm not saying that because I'm blowing smoke. The energy and people are paying attention, are noticing. It's awesome.
Well, that's good. And that's what makes it worth it at the end of the day. I go home, I look at Raymond Adams' pictures sometimes and just see the pure joy that it's bringing people, and it is although it's not easy, it's a worthwhile endeavor, and it feels good, to see people being safe, having fun, and just doing their thing out here.
Kyle, if I were to give you a long weekend off and it's just you, your wife and kids are gone to Europe and you just get this time, what do you do with that time?
I don't know, I'm going to work. I think I'm a little bit of a robot, James. I get up and I go to work. I mean, I probably, if they were home, you're saying they're gone?
They're gone. You have no commitments. Do you have hobbies? Other things you want to wrench on?
Well, that's what I was thinking. I might, just go work around on the farm, which is also an airport, and just check out I probably would end up working on something, just either getting my accomplishment list. There's a lot of things that come with owning a farm and a drop zone. But I don't have a solid vacation plan right now.
Final question for you that I like to ask many of my guests is, tell me about a crossroads moment. Crossroads moment in your life where maybe you had not met somebody that was critical to your journey, or maybe you said yes to something that you normally wouldn't, or maybe you said no to something you normally wouldn't. But as a result of maybe a moment in time that if you hadn't taken that yes or that no, or met that certain person, that it's unlikely you and I are even talking right now.
I think that's an easy one, man. I talked about it already. That's my first skydive. You want to do this? And I was just cruising along as a mechanic and an engineer, and I would have been, my life would have been totally different had I not done that one skydive. One pivotal moment was that jump for a fundraiser. Knew nothing about it, and the rest is history, man.
Kyle, man, thank you so much. Everyone has the greatest gift you can give anyone is their time, and your time is super precious. And I am really grateful that you spent an hour chatting about your journey. I've known you for a little bit, but I didn't know your story. And it's awe-inspiring, man. It's incredible.
Yeah. Well, it's not done being written, hopefully.
Yeah, keep it going. Keep it going.
If that's another one of my sayings. If we're lucky, we get to keep doing this. You know, you can learn something from everybody, man. Good, bad, and indifferent. Just keep learning, keep doing.
Kyle, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, James. I appreciate it.
Many thanks to our title sponsor, SSK Industries, home of Cypress USA, for supporting the 20-Minute Call. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast app. And if you want to support the show further, support the companies that support this podcast. Until next time, blue skies.